Welcome back to Salem News Channel. Governor Ron DeSantis and State Surgeon General Dr. Joseph Ladapo announced that Florida will work to phase out all childhood vaccine mandates in the state, making it the first in the nation to do so.
Who am I as a government or anyone else, or even who am I as a man standing here now to tell you what you should put in your body? Who am I to tell you what your child should put in your body? I don't have that right. Your body is a gift from God. What you put into your body is because of your relationship with your body and your God.
Did I hear him say your body is a gift from God? Wow, that's quite a statement. And it's true, but what a statement. Vaccines protecting against once common and sometimes deadly childhood diseases like polio and measles have long been required for children at schools across the United States. DeSantis also announced on Wednesday the creation of a state-level Make America Healthy Again Commission, modeled after similar initiatives pushed at the federal level by Health and Human Services Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. Wow. Lots of developments coming out of Florida there. Former directors of the Center for Disease Control and Prevention are speaking out against Health and Human Services Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr., saying he is endangering the health of Americans. 7 former directors and 2 former acting directors published an op-ed in the New York Times on Monday, just days after the ousting of the CDC's new director, Dr. Susan Monterez. The op-ed points to several decisions made by Kennedy, including the firing of federal health workers, touting unorthodox treatments, and canceling $500 million in federally funded mRNA vaccine research. Today, U.S. Health Secretary Robert F. Kennedy sat before a congressional committee where he faced questions about the alleged turmoil at federal health agencies.
Enacting an agenda that I think is fundamentally cruel and defies common sense. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Do I get a reply? Or, Senator, you've sat in that chair for how long? 20, 25 years, while the chronic disease in our children went up to 76%. And you said nothing. You never asked the question why it's happening. Why is this happening? Today, for the first time in 20 years, we learned that infant mortality has increased in our country. It's not because I came in here. It's because of what happened during the Biden administration that we're going to end.
So it gets feisty there. Joining me now to discuss is surgeon and founder of ProCare Consultants, Dr. Evan Nadler. Welcome to the program.
Oh, thanks so much for having me. Appreciate it.
So I'm glad you're here because this is a big topic, not just for bureaucrats in Washington, D.C., but it's moms and dads across the country. And I believe there's a physiological difference in the way that individual human beings respond to different medications. That's why, sometimes you have, I have no response to morphine. I don't care how much of it you shoot into me. It does not relieve pain for me. I literally cannot receive any benefit from it. For other people, one of morphine is enough to almost knock them out, right? So that's a physiological difference. It doesn't mean that no pain meds work on me. Other pain meds work beautifully, but I know that from having surgery and having been administered morphine afterwards to no avail. So if that's the case with morphine, it could also be the case with vaccines, but we haven't had an acknowledgement of that very real reality. Like, I'm no doctor. In fact, I have no scientific background in that arena, but I happen to think that common sense wise, it must be true that different human beings respond differently to different treatments, and that includes vaccines.
No, 100%. And first of all, sorry that you don't respond to morphine. That kind of is a rough way to go through life, because I'm sure you had to go through a procedure where you got the morphine and didn't have a response, and you told your providers, and they probably didn't believe you in the beginning.
That's right.
Because it's an uncommon situation. But going back to your point, so science is a complex entity, right? And statistics, which are part of science, is super boring, and I'm not going to talk to you guys a lot about that. But if you look at science, you know that there's something called the bell curve. And what the bell curve means is that the average intervention will work sort of right here in the middle. That's your average. And then on each side of the bell curve, you have outliers, people who super respond to whatever the intervention is, and then those who don't respond at all on the other side of the curve. And so it's just really affirming your point, which is we talk about averages because that's the easiest thing for people to understand, and it's sort of how science is done. But even in studies where, the health secretary said today that he would only accept science done to a level of certainty. Science had to be completely certain. And that's not how science works. Even in the best scientific studies, there's about a 1% chance that your findings are random. So, yes, we've talked a lot about science and gold standard science and radical transparency and all these words. But the reality is most folks don't really understand what that means. And unfortunately, it's more rhetoric than real content.
It is. I have to tell you, the idea here is that there's something wrong with America's children when so many of them are suffering ill adverse effects. And, we're the most advanced society in the world. It's the easiest place here in America. It's the easiest place on the planet to get healthy food and to live a healthy lifestyle. But it also hinges on the choice to do so, right? It's an everyday decision to eat vegetables instead of, noodles or, there's all these decisions that have to be made. You can put some of it back at the doorstep of parents, but once people become adults, whether they had good training at home or not, there's a wealth of information out there on how to be healthy. I wanted to get your thoughts on no mandates at all for the vaccines. Obviously, the vaccines played a role in eradicating diseases that were deadly at the time, but now that we're here in 2025, should they be mandated? What's your opinion on that?
Yeah, so it's actually a really interesting question. And if Florida is able to legislatively actually remove all of the mandates as they are intending to do, it will actually sort of be a natural experiment where we find out the answer to your question. Because right now, whether you're on the side of no mandates or if you're the side of keeping things the way they are, the data really aren't there other than modeling data. And I think it's fairly unequivocal that vaccines have helped in far more, several-fold, thousands or millions times more than patients who have been hurt by them. So there is a role for them. Now, if the mandates are removed and the American public, or let's say it goes state by state, so Floridians choose not to get vaccines, we will either see a huge uptick in several diseases that we hadn't seen before, or we won't. And then we'll know. But the data that are available, such as the data from West Texas, will suggest that if people don't get their measles vaccine, they're going to probably get measles. So some of the data we do know.
What's interesting about that is some of the danger that we're experiencing stems from another problem that we're having that's completely disconnected from health. And that is if you have people coming here from countries that have not eradicated measles, they will carry measles into the country and reintroduce that into the population, which makes it very difficult. I thank you so much for being willing to talk about this on air. Dr. Evan Nadler, good to talk to you, sir. When we return, Abby Phillips over on CNN's Newsnight is getting a lot of accolades for being very bipartisan. We'll talk about that after the break.